So here we are, Lizette Ibarra, CEO of Latina Chief. Thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing this time, which I hope, with all your knowledge and your experience, my goal for today was really just to give you the platform to please share as much as possible as you can with us. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Olga. Happy to be here.
So before we get started, tell me a little bit about Latina Chief, what you do, what's your company about? Like what can we learn about you?
Of course. So Latina Chief, we are an executive search firm. We are in the business of connecting organizations with the talent they need to be more successful. But we have a focus on women leaders. So we always make sure that our talent pools include the best female talent out there. So that's what makes us truly different and truly special.
Wonderful. Thank you for your work. Thank you for that. Now, one of the things that I always come across, with the women that I work with and the women that I've met all throughout the years, I always find it very curious. It's very curious to me, and I have this. I always want to learn a little bit about what helped them shape the way they feel about money, right?
Okay.
Like how their philosophies around money came to be, right? So what I'd like to ask in your case is, what in your childhood or what are your earliest memories about money? How did those memories shape how you felt, or how money, what kind of role money took in your life, in your young adulthood? What are some of those earliest memories for you?
Of course, it's a great question because I don't think we often reflect on that, and it truly does, shape the tone of what you do later in life. So I grew up in a very traditional family. I grew up in Mexico. I was born and raised in Mexico. And although, I went to a private school, and I don't remember really, having a lot of struggles, financially speaking, but it wasn't either that, money was abundant or that it was always a struggle when we wanted to do something special. I grew up wanting to do a lot of sports. I've always been into sports. So I remember convincing my parents to give me the money to take these gymnastics classes or anything that I wanted to do. It was always a struggle. So again, it was a modest environment.
Right.
Where we needed to be creative in order to get the things that we wanted to get in life. And always the conversation was about money is not enough. There's not enough money. We need to take care of money. So kind of
It was fragile.
it was fragile. And I even heard it, so many times from my mom and my aunts and my grandmas, like they said, you have to take care of money. Money won't last forever. So that it was this mindset that money was limited. And to me, I decided no. It took me a lot of work
To break
break through that and say no. Money is available for everybody, and if you work hard, you follow your passion, you can have access to that. But it was a long journey to get to that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of mindset, right?
It's a lot of mindset, and to some degree, I think it gave me a lot of fuel to pursue what I do. One thing I was clear in my head is that I was not going to follow that path. I wanted to, be financially free.
Yes.
And that's what, I became an entrepreneur, and I've worked very hard, and it's paid off.
Yay, that's wonderful. Well, I caught something in what you said. You said my mom, my grandma, my aunts. You mentioned all women. Now, that is not something I often hear. And especially, growing up in a traditional Latino family, Mexican family, there's usually these, these roles or stereotypical, sides, like who does what, right? But you mentioned all women.
Yeah.
How is that women were such a big part of your childhood money philosophy?
Yeah, well, I grew up surrounded by by women. My mom and my grandma were great figures in my family, and it was a very traditional family. Like my dad, he's an architect. He worked very hard. He was a very successful architect. My granddad, he was one of the first travel agents to start a travel agency chain in my
Beautiful.
hometown. But my grandmother, she was taking care of the monies. Like he
Mm,
knew how to run the business, but
yeah.
she was saying, you know, this money will go here. With this money, we will buy this house. We will do this, and we will
Wow.
do that, right? And in my house, it was the same thing. Like my mom will make a lot of the big financial decisions. So I think that stuck
Wow.
with me big.
That's wonderful. I'm
Don't tell
glad.
my husband, but that's where it comes from.
No, I love that. I love that
Yeah.
because, like I said, even today, like even in this day and age,
Right.
in a modern family, what I find is not that women can't. Obviously, we
Right.
can,
Right.
and it's not that we don't want to.
Yeah.
I think what I've have come to realize is that sometimes women will take like a back seat or just kind of delegate the
Yeah.
financial
Yeah.
decisions because we're already handling so much, right? We're handling the kids' schedules, we're handling, where we're gonna go on
Yeah.
vacation and where we're gonna stay, and like
Yeah.
handling so many things. And like you said, sometimes we're handling things that we're not even realizing we're handling. Right? We're
Exactly.
making decisions on the spot. And so sometimes it's like, all right, at least the financials, look, you take care of that while I take care of all of this. So I love that from a very early start, you
Yeah.
knew that money did have its role in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and as an adult, I'm sure over time, that's one thing that we realize is that money is not, and that's why we spoke about
Yeah.
mindset, right? Money, it's not evil the way
Yeah.
some people,
Exactly.
growing up have heard. Like I've
Yeah.
heard some women tell me like, oh, I heard money was bad. And but at the end of the day, it's a means to an end,
Of course.
and that end is different for everyone, right? I
Exactly.
mean, if
Exactly.
maybe for me it's one thing, for someone else it's another, but we do have to realize it does have its role to play
Of
in
course.
our
Yeah.
life and freedom, like you mentioned,
Of
right?
course. And I grew up, where the society, the men, were the providers
Right,
to the
right.
families. And to some degree, like we as women, me growing up, pursuing a career, sometimes was seen like, oh, and is she not going to stay home and take care of the kids? And all of this, like I was always, when my kids were little, I was almost always the only one working, from the moms, and they were going, to breakfast and
Yeah.
get-togethers, and I was going to the office and like, oh, poor thing, she needs to work. No, I did not need to
Oh
work.
my
Like
God.
my husband had a good work. I wanted to work, which was
Right.
different, and that was the way I took control of
Wow.
my financial freedom, which I'm very happy to
No,
achieve.
and it's something I have to admire because I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah,
right? Even now there's well, maybe now it's kind of turned around, right?
yeah,
Like now it's like, oh, you don't work, or you're only gonna be, a stay-at-home mom.
exactly.
And
It's the opposite
yeah,
now.
it's a different dynamic,
Yeah,
but either one, and I hold the two very, very high,
exactly.
because being a stay-at-home mom, I feel, is even harder, right?
For sure.
So, and so I know personally,
Yeah,
that you work very closely with your husband,
yeah.
with your spouse, and I know that you've been married over 20 years. And so being that you've worked as a team,
Mm-hmm.
throughout this entrepreneurial journey that you've had, is there something that you could share with us, or tell me a little bit about how that's been, working alongside your husband, with your husband, and making decisions together on
Of
your
course,
journey?
of course. Yeah, that's a funny story because not everybody knows that we were college sweethearts.
Aw.
That's where we met. So of course we share the same profession, and we both started with sharing careers, different corporations. But just 6 months in after we got married, he was relocated to a different city.
Oh
So I needed to quit my job that I loved at the time. So that was very early in our marriage. We needed to have this conversation. What is this going to look like for us? Because you have your career, I have mine. How are we gonna balance things out?
my God. Right.
So we decided at that time that we were gonna go one little step further with his career, that he was gonna pursue like the corporate traditional career,
Okay.
and I was gonna, follow whatever that meant at the time, right? So I quit my job. We moved to a different city, to a new place, and it was very hard for me to leave my job. But I always was confident that I was gonna find, the ways to
Right.
get around. So I was able to find a new job, and then continue to build on my career for a few years until my first son came to the scene. And then that's how I became an entrepreneur. Not a lot of people know this. I didn't plan for it. I saw
Yeah.
myself as a CEO or a CHRO of a huge corporation, of a
That was your
Fortune 500.
profession?
That was my professional goal. Like I completely saw myself doing that. But we had moved from our hometown. We had no support system. I had no family. Like it was my husband and me and my little precious baby, and it was very difficult for me because I was still working in corporate. So I needed to drop him off at daycare
tough.
like 6 a.m. I had to commute like
tough.
1 hour back and forth
Yeah.
if he was sick. It was very difficult.
Yes.
So I did that like for the first year of his life, and all I can remember is that on my way back and back to work, I was like, there's got to be a different way for women. It's I didn't have a baby for this. I wanted to be with my
Yes.
baby.
Especially those early years and early moments.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was in Mexico. I don't know if you know this, but you have only 42 days after
my
you
God.
give birth, and you have to be back at work.
Oh my God.
So 42, like he was
no,
this
a month.
tiny.
Oh.
He was freezing in Monterrey, so I had to drop him off
No, I
at 6
can't.
in the morning. I
You have to
cried.
pry me off that baby.
No, seriously. And I was like, why? Like, it was so confusing
Yeah.
to me because I knew
You were conflicted.
I was very conflicted because I wanted to. I loved my baby. I loved being a mom, and but I
time.
also loved my career,
Yeah.
and I knew that I was not going to be fulfilled if I
Yeah.
was a staying mom
Yeah.
home. That's the way I was.
Yeah. It's 'cause
Just
you
it's
had
my
your personal goals.
that's my
Yeah.
personal. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. So I
Wow.
decided, after 1 year, I resigned and I started my own company with nothing but a pen, a notebook, and a desk, and that's how the story began.
It's a
for me.
beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that,
you.
because I know even personally
Yeah.
that there's this conflict internally when you have your first child, especially, right?
Yeah.
Because it's your first time at the rodeo,
Yeah.
and you're like, wait a second,
Exactly.
this baby is everything.
How do I?
This baby is more than even me at this
Yeah.
point, right? And so it's, as a mother, even just talking just nature, right? Like as a mother, you feel this this beautiful obligation, right, to do everything for this child and this little life that has changed your life, right? But and I love that story. I myself, I can share the same. I knew very early in my life as well. First of all, I always wanted to be a mom. Like that was my number one goal. But I also knew that I had to be ready because I had very early money philosophies about, being able to take care of the children I wanted to bring to this world. I didn't want to have
you
kids
were not gonna place
and
it
then
in
be
somebody
like,
else's
oh my
hand.
gosh, I didn't want to feel like I couldn't give them everything. I wanted to be able to, give them the things. And similar to you, I didn't have the luxuries in life. We had the basic necessities, and I had my own personal goals. I wanted to to sing and dance, and I was like this little artsy kid. And so I wanted to be able to provide, the at least the opportunity for my kids to do what makes them happy, right? And pursue their passions. And so I knew that I had to be an entrepreneur or find a way that I could balance the time that I know they needed from me. And I'll share one last thing, which is I think is kind of funny. I had a college fund for my kids that were not born yet. When I was in college. I set up a college fund for my unborn children when I was in college. I was like, man, this is expensive. I'm a finance major, and the biggest thing you learn is, start early.
Yeah,
I'm like,
start
I know I
early.
want kids. Let's start a college fund.
That's
It's kind
awesome.
of crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. But that's how, that's how these things shape your life and your
Exactly.
decisions, right? Like,
Exactly.
I want to be a mom, but I don't want to lose myself. I want to
Exactly.
contribute all this passion that I have, for the world, right?
Exactly.
That's
And
what I
it's not
hear.
always easy. I think this is important for all women out there to know that, sometimes it's easy to combine everything you do in life, like motherhood with work, with your passions. Sometimes it's very difficult. It's not an even road. So
Yes.
you have to keep going through the ups and downs, but it's worth it if what brings you joy in life, your children, your family, and
Absolutely.
the little pleasures. You're in the right path.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we got it. All right. And so, what would you say now, looking, forward and fast forwarding, what would you say success means to you now? Because I know at one time you made this big sacrifice and you took a leap because becoming an entrepreneur, it can go many ways, right? And obviously things have worked out well. I know you love what you do.
Yeah.
What would you say today is your definition of success? What's success to you now?
Success, if you ask me, is when you feel at peace with what you have built, at peace with your financial progress as well, because that's very important. And I've lately become very vocal about saying how important money is in life. Like, we don't often talk about it, especially for women, because but no, having money is great because it gives you freedom to enjoy your family in your own terms, right? Like, if we want to take a trip and you're able to do it, that's great. So again, going back to success is just being healthy, being at peace, and having freedom to enjoy life on your own terms. Again, for some people, it's having planes and boats. That's not my case, but it's having the freedom, like, hey, I want to go, this weekend and play a tennis tournament in Orlando with my friends. That's freedom to me. That's peace. That brings me balance, and being able to provide my kids with a very good education. That's peace of mind, and that's to me my definition of success, because it gives me peace.
That's wonderful. Like you said, it's being able to sleep at night, and
exactly.
feeling like I gave it my all, right? I gave it my
Exactly.
all, and now I get to reap the benefits.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Now, what I would say, I know you told me earlier that that you got married at 25, right? Age 25, which is beautiful. So, what would you say to that young lady? If you were looking at yourself, right before the big day, right? Any piece of advice that you would have shared, or, like you said, peace of mind, maybe it's taken you some time to get that, maybe it wasn't always that way. But is there something that you would tell your 25-year-old self, hey, this is a golden nugget for you. This is something I would want you to know now.
Yeah, I will tell her to stick with it, to stick, with her instinct, because I would say from 15 to 25, it wasn't easy for me financially speaking. Like, when I graduated from college, and I was thinking this morning as I was coming to talk to you, when I started my first corporate job. I made very little money. Like, I love the work that I did, but I made very little money, even at a point that sometimes, like, what am I going to work? Where to work today? So sometimes I ended up in my mom's closet.
Oh, wow.
Like, okay, does she have something decent for today's meeting? And I remember this day that I went into work wearing my mom's clothes.
Yeah.
And I had this friend, and she was like, "What are you wearing?" And she was laughing at me. And I was so embarrassed. And I was like, someday I'm going to be able to buy, the clothes that I want. But so it was a defining moment for her. So it was difficult, to break through that barrier, like, just barely making it paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
But when I decided to pursue entrepreneurship, and on top of everything, I decided to bring into my business women that, like me, had to step out of their corporate journeys to become moms, and weren't finding a way back into corporate. Wow. Those were the women that I hired and that I trained into my business, and together we built a successful company. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked, because I didn't know that's where your your company was born from that experience,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Exactly. I was looking at an interview that I was invited to when I, like 3 or 4 years after I started my business. It was with a big media company in Mexico. I was selected as, these 30 under 30 promises. And they were interviewing me about my company. And now all I could talk about was the women that I brought to my team and how proud I was that I was building this company surrounded by women. Instead of talking about the business and what we did and taking
like,
the advantage of all that publicity.
That's so
all, and now, and I was at first so embarrassed, like, how come I missed that opportunity?
Oh my God.
But now I look back then and say, yeah, it was the passion
Yeah.
that got me there, and that keeps me here.
That's
nowadays.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, even though at the time you felt like you might have made a mistake.
Exactly. Oh my
but
God.
I'm sure, like you said, people see the passion and they see when you love what you do and that your heart is in your business. It's not, it's not a facade, right?
Yeah.
People can see that genuine nature and aspect of your work. So I know it paid off. Obviously, we're here. All right. So we spoke a little bit about this. You touched up on it a little bit earlier. But what would you say, like, helps you stay balanced? What helps you, keep your eyes on the prize? What makes the tough days easier to bear or handle? Anything that you learned along the way? Is there anything you do? Like, what would you say can help a young woman or a new entrepreneur or even someone that's been in business for a while and feels like they just can't keep, everything together? Because sometimes you're doing so many things that the days fly by, the months fly by. And that's something I always I come across with the women I work with. They're like, Olga, I wanted to meet with you like 4 years ago and it took me this long because I've been busy and just happens. What would you say? What helps you stay centered or keep that balance?
Of course. Yeah, no, it's a great question because we do live busy lives. And of course, the core of everything is knowing that your family is good, is healthy, and in the right path. But on top of that, on the more practical side, like day to day, what keeps me focused and centered is tennis to me. I think that as women, we all need to have this space that is only for us. That, in my case, tennis keeps me emotionally, physically, and spiritually balanced. That's like it's the only one place where the world stops and I have fun.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. Like just yesterday, I had this heavy day. It was a really tough day at work, and I had this tennis match, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I still know. But then I went and I had so much fun. I laughed with my friends, and I came back as a better person.
Yeah,
so,
you're like, you know what, I can tackle
yeah, my husband is like, yeah, go do your thing, go you play your tennis.
He knows.
Yeah, so I think it's just so important, whether it's tennis, yoga, whatever, painting, reading, have this space that nurtures you, holistically.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. You need to find that place.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I mean, obviously, with sport, I mentioned to you earlier as well that it does have its philosophical, component, right? Yeah. Because you learn how to win, you learn how to lose. Try not to be a sore loser. Also, there's a lot of, teamwork, depending on the sport. I find that, even in like my own personal life, but also as I was mentioning with my children, as parenting, the way that sports also contributes, as a parent and the lessons that are there. So it wouldn't be any different for us as adults. We're always learning. And with all the things we tackle on a daily basis, you need to hit something sometimes, right?
Of course. Hit
the ball, get it out of your system.
Exactly.
All right. So anything else that, on your journey as a businesswoman and working with women, it's something we share as well, right? Anything that you've experienced in the last few years that you would say, even with the women you work with, is there something that, you would want to share, based on your daily work and the women that you meet on a daily basis? Something you would want to share on that end, like on a professional basis?
Of course. I believe, when we as women, we work and we have families and we have a lot of responsibilities, that we carry in our shoulders a lot of silent work that's just, in our shoulders. It's not easy, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to bring more women along the road, as many as we can. So often we hear that, no, it's mostly women, that put the los tropiezos for other women. And no, it's really, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that we have a lot of things to carry on our shoulders. Give yourselves, some grace.
Yes.
And keep going and pursue whatever, it is for you, that makes you happy in life, whether it's entrepreneurship or it's your corporate career or being a stay-home mom. Everything, has its own burden, and whatever it is, just, follow that path and trust your instinct and bring other women along the way with you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Again, thank you for being here. And I hope it's not the last time you visit. We want to see you
for sure.
at least a couple more times to share a
you so
little bit
much.
more with us.
Of
Thank you
course.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Olga.